All right, so this is Rich Prendergast for the Town of Old Lime's Water Pollution Control Authority. In person in the town hall, I have Steve Tsunami, myself, Rich Prendergast, Frank Chan, and Dmitry Tolchinsky. Online, we have Randy Nixon and Andrea Lombard. As expected, Rob McCarthy is excused. I believe Corey, if Corey's out there, we don't know it yet. You might be called in as a call-in name. And Joe Carpentino, I don't know if he's attending as well. If you are, you should be able to unmute yourself and confirm that you can talk. Tonight's agenda is fairly light. There's not a lot of motions. It's more of an update. We'll go through all these things and then we'll have budget updates. We'll have business of the Soundview miscellaneous areas, Soundview and miscellaneous area B sewer project, correspondence, new business, public comment, and adjournment. So the first part is approval of minutes from the August 9th. Can I have a motion by a WPCA member to approve the minutes from August 9th?
So moved.
I'll second it.
So Dimitri made a motion, Randy seconded, and Andrea seconded it. Open discussion. Any comments, concerns about the meeting minutes? Okay, not hearing any. Can I have we'll do a in-person roll call since we have part in-person and part virtual. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Andrea, how do you vote? Yes?
Yes.
Randy, how do you vote?
Yes.
Raise your hand. Let the record show that is unanimous. All agreed to approve the minutes. Motion moved, passed. The next item is the budget update and planning. For that, I'll let Steve Tsunami give an update. Go ahead, Steve.
We can't hear Steve.
Steve, so Steve is, I'm going to try and get Steve to speak into my computer. Maybe that'll help a little bit better.
Sorry about that. So we have two carryovers from 2021, 2022. WPCA legal for $31,700 and WPCA project consultant for $25,000. We have an expense for Sussman Shapiro that was working on the ordinance work for $1,054.50. That's going to be encumbered under WPCA legal from last year. And we had a bill that has now been expended for $2,998 under Infotech for the Carmondi software. So we spent, I think, like 2% of our budget. We have a balance of $85,424 in this year's budget and a remaining balance of $55,645.50 in last year's carryovers.
Any questions about the budget?
No questions on my end.
Okay. Okay, switching back to the next agenda item. Soundview area miscellaneous B, the status of the East Lyme IMA. Well, the status is we have a signed copy from all parties, 6 copies. We digitized it. A long time getting this, and I personally thank Frank Chan for kicking this off. I think his explanation to East Lyme, how it impacts them, put it to the point where they were agreeable. And then we had the private beach associations help, and we had the first selectman help. So it's a team effort, and we finally got this IMA. This IMA, it's an intermunicipal agreement. It was the last remaining agreement we needed to go for design funding. This agreement does helps us if we install sewers, does not obligate us to pay anything if we do not install sewers. If we do not use it, it expires. I'm not exactly sure when the date is. I think it's September 2023. So before I go further on, is there any questions from WPCA members? Okay, I'm going to move on to the next status, which is additional funding and grant applications. So we've been cooperating with the private beach associations to try to get some kind of additional funding. We've identified prior, a couple of months back, that we submitted for what's called a American Rescue Plan for the town, but also some other funds through what's called, let me see here. Congressional direct spending earmarks, and we did what's called a STAG grant. We put in for $14 million. It was reduced to 11.2 million, and then it was declined. We're told that we asked for more money than anyone has asked before. I find that hard to believe because I hear about projects that are much larger. We had a public info session August 27th, and days before that, we learned that 11.2 million was not approved or not chosen as a project to go forward. Since then, we've had meetings with staff of Senator Christopher Murphy, Richard Blumenthal, and Rosa DeLaura, and Paul Formica. We had suggestions about getting a bunch of smaller grants, which we're investigating. Some of the grants, we're told the work and the legal expense make it more expensive to apply for that grant than not. I have not heard of any really positive information about getting additional grant money that would make this project go through. That doesn't mean that we haven't gotten it. It just means that there's a lot of programs out there. The ones that I think are summarized now are down to more of that congressionally directed spending. There's a NOAA, a NOAA that has a Long Island Sound geographical program. There's a FEMA BRIC, which is a cost sharing grants would have to be submitted through the town to the state, and from the state it would go to federal, and then come back to the state, and then back to the town, and then from the town to the sewer projects. There's the Clean Water State Revolving Funds, which we are currently getting 25% grant for them in a 20-year, 2% loan. We had a meeting with the state of Connecticut's Department of Environmental and Energy Protection yesterday morning. They said that by statute, they're not allowed to give us more money, which is surprising to me, but that's what they said. We thought that we could get like a 50% grant, and they said they can't do it. There's a possibility where we create ourselves as a regional WPCA, which is similar to what we're doing already, except we get 5% more grant, which wouldn't be enough to make it economically feasible and affordable. And that would also cost significant legal expenses and adjustments and agreements. So we're still looking for additional funding. We also requested the state, and they granted it yesterday, which is amazing. We requested it in the morning, and by the afternoon we had it. Well, it wasn't for us, the Soundview project. It was for the private beach association's loans that are due in this January. I've got a year extension. This is maybe the third extension on their loans to when they have to pay them back. So where we are right now, at least from my point of view, is we have some breathing room and some time to secure additional funding, but there is an end in the road, so to speak. If we don't get the funding, then we can go back to the state. And we had this conversation with the state, and I think this is very interesting. That's why I'm bringing it up. They verbally said, we have demonstrated that we are in compliance with the consent order because we're making strong, good faith efforts to resolve the problems. They're not looking at coming after us at the effort right now. I think that's all good news. We've, over the years, presented evidence that we were making progress. And they presented evidence back saying that we accept this. But we did not get an answer of what happens if we decide to, if we don't have enough money to do the project economically. We've also explored with them what that looks like. What's the definition? And they're going to send us some information. They sent me some information this afternoon. I have not yet looked at it. But we're gonna look into that detail as well. And the idea is that we're preparing for, I think we should prepare for a bunch of different options. Now, before I go any further, I said a lot. Does anyone from the WPCA have a question or comment that they want to talk about? I'm not hearing any.
Rich, were all the other WPCAs present at these meetings?
Yes.
And,
So I think everyone heard that. Were all the other WPCAs present at these meetings? Yes, they were.
and do any of them have strong opinions one way or another?
They have strong opinions, and they are one ways and they are other ways. I'm kind of being joking around about it. It's hard to nail it down. It depends on the situation. But in general speaking, I think Soundview neighborhood and Old Colony neighborhood are very similar in construction and in cost. The other beach associations have other issues that the residents are dealing with. There's roads, there's water, there's some stormwater infrastructure. So they're considering a number of things besides sewers, and they also have additional costs, higher costs than we do. And I think those beach associations have a real problem with going forward. They actually need grant money. And if they don't go forward, the project doesn't get less expensive, unfortunately. It gets somewhat less expensive, but not enough. So it basically kills the project, I think. Now, I could be wrong, and these are all based on estimates, but I'm just trying to give an honest assessment of where we are at the moment. So any other questions from WPCA members? Okay. So there's a grant application. No, that's not what I meant. There's an application for the Soundview Miscellaneous Area B design review process. We just got that as well. We're going to go through that, and offline, Andrea volunteered to help me with that application. I have not looked at it. I don't know how detailed it is, but we need to pull together the numbers that we need to. And what it generally says is we submit a plan to the state of how much money we need for design. Now, we have an existing quote from Woodard and Curran that's been on the books for a while. And Woodard and Curran have promised that they have not increased it, unlike anybody else in the world today. And we have some additional expenses from the private beach associations from their design. We have some legal expenses that we've had to cover. So we have to itemize these items and put these items in that application, submit it, and then the state will then review it and consider what expenses are applicable. So we'll have to figure that out. And I'll work with Andrea on the side for that, and depending on the application, we might have to have another meeting to discuss it, to approve it, or it might be, it is what it is. Of course, I'll copy our treasurer, Steve, into this. Should there be since he has a handle on the finances. And I guess that's all I wanted to talk about on the grant application. Any comments from WPCA members on this? Okay, I'm going to move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the review of the proposed sewer ordinance. It's on the agenda. I was hopeful that we were going to get some feedback from our legal. We have not. And to tell you the truth, I don't think it's urgent because I think we've missed our chance to have a townwide meeting during the summer months to approve it. So I don't know how urgent it is anymore. So we have no really update on the sewer ordinance. The status was if we got legal to review the edits that we made and suggest that it's acceptable from a risk point of view, we could then bring that back to the first selectman's office and make a recommendation that they agree to it, review it and agree it, and then schedule at a town meeting. But we'll have to wait on that agreement, and then we'll have to schedule that some other future meeting. Any comment
Excuse me, Rich.
on that? Yes, Randy, go ahead.
So any estimate from legal when they will get back to us?
They're behind in schedule and they're working on high priority things. So they didn't give me an estimate. They just couldn't get it done in time for our members to review it. I will say this, and I sound like I'm making excuses for them. We have a very attractive legal rate, and they get priority from the town for different items. And there's some items that are higher priority than what ours is, especially since they know that we missed the opportunity to have a summer meeting for it. So I imagine we'll make progress within the next month.
Okay, thank you.
Any other or different questions from WPCA members? Okay, now we're moving on to the next agenda item, which was correspondence. Because we had the August 27th meeting, we got a lot of correspondence. Well, we got a lot of correspondence from a couple of people. I'm just going to go through the sections, and there's a correspondence from Laura Parent talking about a complaint that her questions were not covered in the August 27th meeting. Were there any WPCA members have questions about that correspondence? Okay. There was another one from Mary Daly, multiple questions, including tear down her house and build after sewers were installed. I think that's an interesting issue that we planning to address in more detail. As I explained in the correspondence, our plan is to be fair and transparent and not to have somebody in the neighborhood get a special deal or a special avoiding using the sewer program. So those vacant lots that are very few vacant lots, or someone that creates a vacant lot, they are not going to get a thing where they wait till sewers are installed and then build a house and don't have to pay as much as everyone else did. Any questions from WPCA members on that correspondence? No. There was a Mark Stanton asked a complaint about sewer hookups. Costs were not discussed, and they were discussed in the 27th meeting as far as benefit assessment, but as far as what he was referring to is adjusting the plumbing at your house, or the connecting of the plumbing to your house, that was not discussed. We do have that in a previous presentation that's on the town website from the 2019 update. It's still valid. And it depends on the house's situation, but it's estimated to be $50 to $100 per linear foot from your house to the street. Any questions on that correspondence? I'm not seeing any, so moving on, Fraser Walsh, is a subcontractor that did some design work for Wood and Curran, is looking for what he's gonna get paid. Just pointing out that that work was during COVID, it was not authorized, did it ahead of time. We will intend to pay everyone that did work on it. But we need to go through the process, which is part of that, what I mentioned earlier, that application for design funding, where the state provides the funding to the contractor, sets up a loan, and then we get that 2% loan over 20 years minus a 25% grant. Any questions on that correspondence? Okay. There was a correspondence from Dennis Maluzzo asking if the WPCA gets to use the middle school for free, or how much it costs. I don't know if we'll get to use it for free. We had to pay for a custodial person to open the school, and manage the information, I guess, the doors and clean the place afterwards. And that's an hourly rate. I don't know what that rate is, or what the total was. So I responded to that. Any questions on that one? I see one question. Go ahead.
Do we just pick up the 29.7% of that bill?
No, the town paid up for it. So I think I don't know if the town's WPCA got it, but I'm pretty certain that they didn't bill the private beach associations. If that's what you're referring to, I think. Yeah. The first selectman arranged that, and I've only done that twice, I think, in 9 years. Yeah. So I didn't really focus on that. Any other questions? Okay, the last one was Mary Daly stating the costs have risen 30%, and the WebEx recording picked up typing. It was difficult to hear. Our clerk that's typing the notes this time has pulled her computer away from the microphone. So we're trying to be considerate to make it a clear recording. Any questions on that? Okay. So that's the end of the correspondence. Now we're into the item, new business. Any WPCA members want to bring up new business? Okay. At this point, we're at the public comment. Excuse me. Going to make sure that the participants can unmute them all. Excuse me. So at this point, if you want to make a public comment, go ahead, state your name, we'll recognize you and make your public comment.
Mr. Chairman, can you hear me?
Yes, who's this?
Brian Cornell, Portland Avenue in Old Lyme.
Brian, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I attended that sham of a meeting on August 27th held at the Old Lyme School. My opinion is that not all cost information to anybody involved and could be affected by the project was presented honestly and directly. And I think those participating in that particular conversation should be ashamed of themselves that residents took a lot of time to go sit through that meeting and got only part of the information that we really should have gotten. And also the presentation on the screen in front of the auditorium was unreadable and you couldn't see it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for your comment. Anyone else would like to make a public comment? Just say your name and we'll recognize you.
This is Mary Daly. Can you hear me?
Hi, Mary Dale, you're recognized.
Hi, good evening. Hey, just a few things. You know, the last published EDU list from Frank Chang's from the EDU list had summarized 236 properties into 5 categories based on square footage alone. No distinction was made for seasonal, year-round, or commercial, just square footage. And I believe where you what you published on August 27th as an average cost of $24.10 for the betterment fee was pretty much on in average if you have 236 properties. We have told you many times that inventory was incorrect. The people in Soundview and Area B, several times over 2 years now, have been telling you that inventory was correct, and we're asking you to correct that inventory so that you can come up with correct figures. Because right now that's not correct. But anyway, the glossary you provided was very good, except that it did, as Brian said, neglected to include the additional costs that any property owner in Soundview and Area B would have to shoulder to, one, dig and install a new pipe on their property to the connection at the edge of their property, maybe $6,000 or more, nor to dig out their existing working septic system, nor to connect to Connecticut water, maybe even $6,000 more, nor to upgrade their electrical panel and service if need be for an additional dedicated circuit breaker for a grinder pump. Because grinder pumps not only need a GFI, as you mentioned, but they certainly need a dedicated circuit breaker. So there's a lot of costs that weren't included in that. And I know that the grinder pumps are minimal number, but the rest of it is not. They're universal, and they should have been included in that presentation. So again, I think your number was on based on Mr. Chang's inventory, but I would argue that Mr. Chang's inventory has never been corrected. And that is something basic that the WPCA should address. Good marketing though. The people in Soundview have told you many times. Well, anyway, let me skip that part. Okay, I took some time yesterday because there was also a comment that you made in an email to Laura Parent that the average cost in Soundview was selling at $500K today. There was one property that sold around $500K recently. It had 3 units, 2 houses. One was a 2-family plus another that sold for $5. The house across from me sold for $250. But when I look at the Vision appraisal as of yesterday, 9/12, there are actually not 236, but 139 private properties in Soundview, 33 properties in Area B, and 23 commercial properties, for a total of 195 properties, not 236. This is sort of basic, something that we need to get right if you're going to start communicating numbers publicly as to what the cost will be based on the inventory of houses, which is wrong at this point. Let me see. Okay, and you have said something about to Laura Parent, that based on 500, 7% residential, 10% commercial is fine. We give you enough money, but really in the end, when you look at the appraised values today that are on record in the town hall, it comes out to just barely $3,742,000 at that rate. So you're more than a bit short of your target goal there. I have read also the administrative order, and let me just say, you had mentioned earlier consent order, but we all know we were not under consent order. We're only under an administrative order, which is much, much different than a consent order. But I've read the administrative order, and it seems that the WPCA has already fulfilled the requirements of that order when they retained Woodward and Curran. Nowhere in that order does it say that you must go above and beyond to make this cost affordable by soliciting extra state and federal funds. It is not part of the administrative order that you do that. So it is, I'm questioning what is driving you at this point. Basically the administrative order has been has been satisfied. And I would think at this point, we could go back to the state and say, we have done what is required in the administrative order. I think also the people in Soundview and Area B truly do want to do what's right for the community and for the environment. They do want to do the upgrades that are required. They would really prefer to do individual septic upgrades as required on their individual properties. And that, by the way, is also now, as of 2021, eligible for clean water funds. Maybe in the past, in 2015, it wasn't, but today it is. And that is the path we would choose as a community to pursue. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other want to make a public comment? State your name, please.
Dennis Maluzzo,
Dennis,
7
you're
Portland
recognized.
Avenue. Okay, two things. You mentioned about having a meeting with the WPCAs and Lyme WPCA with the state. And my question to you is, were there any minutes recorded? And if so, how do I get them? Also, on that failed meeting that you guys participated in on August 27th, why was Old Colony and Old Lyme Shores the moderator and the conductor of the meeting when it was an Old Lyme regional wastewater management meeting? You guys should have been in the spearhead to do that, and you weren't. And it was an abysmal display on Old Lyme's part. The consent order is against the 3 private beaches. It's not against Old Lyme, the town of Old Lyme. It's against the private beaches. And that's who should be going after funding for their own use. Leave Soundview alone and continue on. Also, we were directed to solicit questions to the chairperson of the Old Colony Beach Association. I submitted 10 questions. Not a single one got read. Not a single one got replied. You haven't replied to them after they said the WPCAs for that certain beach would reply. It's now September 13th and still nothing. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Dennis. Any other public comment? Okay, not hearing any more. We're going to end the public comment session. At this point, personally, a lot of people approached me and said the August 27th meeting was a great meeting. I recognize that some questions people feel that weren't answered. And I recognize the idea that they think that there's some costs that weren't included. We're talking about $3 to $5 or $6 grand of connection costs versus the $30,000 to $50,000 costs, which I think was the purpose of the meeting. And at that time was what the impact of the federal grants would come. I think that was very helpful because maybe the Soundview residents had a clear understanding of the cost because we've published it. The beach associations had a less clear. And I know this because people have come up to me asking what the costs are going to be for the individual private beach associations. As far as EDU content, we have a number of EDUs where it's a building considered an EDU. We consider some buildings more than one EDUs. Multifamily houses, 5,000 square foot is a private example of that. As far as appreciation and value, there's I guess a consultant that made a statement of how much the appreciation would be, and that's their opinion. We have other consultants that have said it's a higher, and we have a history of saying it's higher. And we also have, what I was trying to explain is the last 2 years, we've had an appreciation of residential housing value that's increased tremendously. If you look at the sales of houses, they've gone for a lot of money. And you look at what houses that are for sale, they go for a lot of money. It is true that the town's assessed value of houses is a lot less. So I get that. As far as the administration order and consent order, we are following the rules and trying to not get in trouble with the state. The administration order, you're right, it does not say we have to go out and get more funding. It says we have to install sewers. We're mandated to install sewers in an area. We can do it expensive, or we can go and get grant money. We're trying to go get grant money. We see other towns getting grant money and lowering their costs to the residents. We're trying to do the same. We may not get the grant money. We may then have a legal basis to say we've tried. We can't just show up and say, oh, we just don't want to do it. That's not how it works. Our legal counsel has advised us that we can't just walk away. And in 2015, we essentially said that to the state. And they sent within, I think, 48 hours, a very nasty letter saying that. As far as the meetings with the other beach associations and the state representatives, there are no minutes. It's not a regular meeting. I'm not required to do minutes. The same way the Board of Education doesn't have to have a minutes when they talk to a contractor about getting a new air conditioner, or the Parks and Rec doesn't have to talk to about the landscaping companies when they have discussion. So, you know, when we get into some contracts, it'll be a committee meeting discussion. Those minutes will be available. But for the regular, you know, these meetings, and they're more informative than anything because nothing is signed. We don't have any motions on our table. It says I'm authorized to sign any agreements, and I don't want to do it that way anyways. Let's see. As far as who's leading the August 27th meeting, I presented personally. Now, you're right. I only presented for a couple of minutes. Someone else volunteered to do the beginning and the middle of the presentation, and I let them. I don't have to do everything as the chairman of Old Lyme. And Old Lyme is a partner with the other beach associations. Let's just remember, if we had to do it on our own, it would be way more expensive. So it would not make sense to have 4 WPCAs and 4 sewer systems next to each other. That's all that I had for comments. Does anyone else from the WPCA want to make a comment? Okay, I'm not hearing any. I'm going to go for adjournment. For all those of the WPCA members, can I have a? So Frank made a motion. Steve seconded. Discussion. All those in favor say aye. Raise your hand. Everybody in this room, let the record show. And Randy said yes. I assume Andrea did say
I
yes
say
as well.
yes.
This meeting is over. Thank you for participating. Thank you for your comments. And have a good night, everybody.